Hey guys, how's things? Okay, this will be take three. Um, I'm binding a bunch of journals that I plan to have listed in my Etsy shop here in a couple days. Um, I've done, I think I'm on about number 20 now. I've got 4 more to go, and these are the ones that are going to have 5 signatures. Some of the other ones are 2 or 3 signatures. They're thinner. Anyway, so I've gotten to the point where I need to bind everything together. Just wanted to do a quick, I'm going to try to make it quick, but, without rushing, Um, so there's tons of videos about, doing a pamphlet stitch or a 3-hole or 5-hole pamphlet stitch for binding. I just wanted to, kind of show you how I do it. I've done lots of videos where I just do a 2-hole binding. But one of the reasons that I would use a 3-hole as opposed to 2 holes is when the paper that I'm using is exceptionally heavy, or I want the journal to have a certain look, like I want it to look, because I always have my binding on the outside of the spine. Lots of different reasons that I would use a 3-hole pamphlet stitch versus just 2 holes. So usually with the Reader's Digest, I just do 2. But with these, since they're a little bit taller, I wanted to do 3-hole, plus I like the look of that on the outside of the spine. So it also is a little bit easier to tie with this, the way I do it, with a 3-hole pamphlet stitch. It's a little bit easier to tie the knot than it is with just the 2 holes. So, and I'll show you why in a second. Well, when we get there. Anyway, so here's what you're going to need. You're going to need your book with your signatures already, figured out and divided out how you want it. One thing about how many signatures do you need? First of all, I always do an odd number. It just makes it easier for dividing out your holes, for getting those even, because you can always find the center, and then you can find one side and the other side, and then however many you need in between those. So that's why I always do an odd number. I will say that I've said this before, but I will say that more signatures, a greater quantity of signatures versus thicker signatures are easier to bind. I will always, like a lot of times I'll see, people will have a journal that's, where the spine is, 1.5 inches thick, and they've put their pages into 3 signatures, and it just, you wind up with a big gap in between the signatures, for one thing, which I kind of don't really like, because of the way I mark on the spine. But it's also difficult to keep a big, thick, bulky signature in line. It's harder to manage. And I don't like to add clips and stuff onto my signatures. I just like to hold it with my hands, and I take my time, and I'm careful about the way I handle the signature so that things don't slip around. And I have a couple little kind of tricks to make that more manageable. Anyway, so when asking yourself, how many signatures should I make? Go for more. Like, do more signatures rather than, thicker, fewer signatures, because you're going to think that, well, if I only do 3 signatures, it'll go quicker or it'll be easier. But it's really easier to deal with thinner signatures with fewer pages. So anyway, so I'm doing, these are going to have 5 signatures. They don't have a lot of different sizes. as far as like the height of the pages. So that makes it a little easier. If I did have a lot of different size pages in here, I mean, I'm talking about the height, I would be sure that the center page is something taller, okay, because that's going to kind of help hold everything together. And pages that are in the middle of the signature are less likely to shift than if you have something in the center of your signature. So sometimes I'll do an envelope in the middle of my signatures, but for these I opted to not do that. Anyway, so lots and lots of things going through my head now that I need to say, but basically, you know, let's see how many pages are in these. 2, 3, 4, 5. It's probably about 12 to 15 pages of kind of average weight paper. I always do some kind of heavier paper on the outside of my signatures. I just feel like it gives it kind of more durability, you know. And also in the center of the signature, I try to use something that's a little bit more sturdy too, rather than using, like, say, you know, like a really thin like onion skin or you know, grid paper or something. I try to use something that's a little more durable on the inside of my signature also, okay, for durability. So one of the reasons that you would do a 3-hole versus 2-hole is if you have those shorter pages, okay? So like if you have little strips that you're trying to bind into your signature or something like that, you're more likely to catch it in one of the 3 holes so that it holds it in place. If you're doing 3-hole, or better yet, a 5-hole, if you have lots of really weird shaped things. So 3-hole, you're generally going to catch those in at least 1 hole to hold it in place. So then when you're organizing your signature, you want to make sure that you've got those like thinner strips or something, either situated to the bottom or the top or the center. You know, keep in mind how you're going to bind it later. Anyway, okay. So we've got signatures, we've got our book cover. This is very simple. I just have some duck cloth. It's like a ticking, but it's more like a canvas type duck cloth glued into the center, or, you know, into the spine. Pretty basic binding, pretty basic construction on the cover, okay? So these are just writing journals, and so they don't have a bunch of weird stuff in them. They're mostly intended just for writing. Anyway, okay, so talked about signatures. As far as string or thread or cord or whatever, I always use this waxed cotton that I get on Amazon, and I like it because it's really strong. I like the reason that it's waxed, or the reason I like the wax cord, is because it makes it a lot easier to tie, and it holds a knot really well. Also, it comes in a gazillion colors, and I think it's a really good value. Like, I bought a selection of these probably 2 years ago, different colors, and, you know, I bind a lot of journals, and it just lasts a long time. Anyway, it's a big roll that you get. I think it's like 700 yards or something. Anyway, so I'll leave a link in the description to where I get this on Amazon. Anyway, so you need some kind of waxed cord or string. And then I use just a block of foam. This is just fun foam. I glued a bunch of, you know, strips of it together with the hot glue gun. When you do that, I try to just do the glue around the edges rather than in the center, because I want to be able to punch through that, and I don't want to have to punch through that hot glue, you know. So I generally just do the hot glue around the edges so that I can punch in the center with my awl. So then you'll need an awl, These, again, I get on Amazon. I bought like a package of 5 of them. I use them for all kinds of things. These are very sharp though, so be careful because I have really damaged my fingers with these before. Anyway, so you need an awl, some kind of pokey tool to poke through your pages and also your cover. And then I use some kind of like a permanent marker, black generally. And then a pencil. I always use a pencil. A pair of pliers for pulling the needle through. Sometimes it's a little, hard to get it through with my fingers. So to save my fingertips, I use a pair of pliers sometimes just for pulling the needle through. And then some scissors. So that's basically it. Scissors, pliers, pencil, pen, awl, and then a needle. So this is a tapestry needle, and it's a blunt edge. It's like a rounded tip. It's not a sharp. It's not sharp. It's just less dangerous for one thing, but the rounded tip on the needle actually makes it easier to sort of guide through the pages. Like, it's less likely to pierce the paper and throw it off. It's the rounded edge has a tendency to actually slip into the holes that you've already made when you punch your holes. The rounded needle tip is more, it's like slick. It kind of just like glides through the hole easier rather than piercing the paper and creating a new hole. It's just less frustrating. So try to find a needle with a relatively large eye that you can get your cord through, and then that's got a rounded tip. And this is not gonna poke my finger either. So those are nice. Okay, so how do I set this up? It's basically the same way that I always do my, like, a 2-hole binding. So I take all my signatures, stack them up. I turn my book cover this way. I'll stack these and make sure that they're in a nice little pile, just how I want them. And then I'm just gonna line these up on one half of the cover, and I want it to kind of come into the center spine just a little bit. Okay. And then, yep, I'm just gonna eyeball it, and I'm gonna take my Sharpie, and I'm gonna mark 3 holes. So I'm gonna go right in the center. When you get to a page where it's a dark color like that and you're concerned that maybe you won't see it, use a pencil, because you can see pencil on black paper. Okay. Anyway, so get that lined up, and then I'm just making a little dot right on the edge of each one of those, the spines of my signatures. Okay. And then do that one, that one, that one, that one, that one. And I want to put a pencil mark on here just in case it doesn't show up. And then marked all 5 signatures. Go back and mark this one with pencil. Okay. Done with that. Okay. And then keep this in place. Just kind of hold it down. I'm just going to draw a really light line with my pencil on the spine, so I know where those holes go. Okay, so then take my stack of signatures. I'm going to turn it upside down so the last signature is on the top. Set those just off to the side, and then I want to make sure that I know where the edge of my cover is. So I just make like a little pencil mark you know, when you have some fabric like this, it's got these lines on it, that makes it easier to kind of figure out where the edge of the the cover is too, you know. So, because I'm trying to find the center. So I'm really just going to eyeball this. So I'm going to take my Sharpie. If I was just using white fabric or some kind of light color fabric that didn't have this stripy design on it, I would probably just use my pencil. But sometimes the pencil marks don't show up on if I have to make a mark where the blue print is. So I'm going to use a Sharpie. So I'm just going to make a little dot right in the center. Okay, little dot. And then I don't want to go all the way to the edge of my cover. I want to be in just a little bit from the edge of the cover. I don't want my signature to be right on this edge. I want it to be in just a little bit. I hope that makes sense. So then make another dot. So I've got my center and then my two outermost holes marked out. And then I'm just going to eyeball right in the middle of those two. So if I was doing 7 signatures, I would do it the same way, except for then I would be making 2 evenly spaced dots in between the center and the outermost one on each side. You know, that just, I don't know, that's why it makes sense to me to do odd numbers. Just makes life easier. So I am kind of following this stripe down because I just happen to have these stripes that I can work with. But, you know, if I didn't have those stripes, I would want to, you know, what I do, I think, is this is what it's hard to explain what you do when you do it so often and you don't really know how you do it. But I guess what I kind of do is I just go like, put my pen or my pencil where that dot would be, and then I just follow it down and make a new dot. You know, that's kind of the way I do it. I know that. Anyway, so I just make my little dots, and this is where I'm going to punch my holes. Obviously, right? All right, and then I try not to be skimpy on how much string do I pull off, because I hate when I'm binding and I'm like just a little bit too short. So I kind of go a little bit generous when I pull off string for my signatures. So generally what you want is twice the height of the cover for each signature, because it's going to go up and then back down, right? Anyway, but I usually use about that much. It's about an arm's length, okay, for each signature. So I try not to work with too much string at one time. So generally I just pull off enough for 3 signatures at a time. And that's really nice when I'm just binding 3 signatures. But so since I'm doing 5, I'll have to rethread my needle. Okay, so then I'm just going to grab that top signature. Okay, I'm going to open it up. Generally, it just opens right up to the center. And I'm just holding it. I'm just holding it with my fingers to keep everything in line. And then carefully just lay it down on my foam. I'm going to punch the top hole and the bottom hole. And then the center hole, I'm going to leave the awl in place. I'm going to grab my signature, flip it over, and then I use the awl, I kind of wiggle it and make sure that it's going straight through there, okay? Because sometimes it's easy when you flip it over to get your holes kind of wonky. So that's why I leave the awl in place when I flip it over, and then I just kind of use the awl to sort of straighten it up again. Okay, and then I go in through the center hole. A lot of people will start a 3-hole pamphlet stitch in the top or the bottom hole, but I always start in the center for a specific reason. And I'll tell you that in a second. Anyway, so then I want to, I'm just holding this on my hand with the needle through the signature. And then I'm just going to pop it through the corresponding hole. Whoops, I didn't punch my holes yet. Hold the phone. Didn't punch my holes yet. Hold on. It looked like I had, since I have those black dots on there. And you won't even see these, right? You're not gonna see those because that's where we're gonna stitch our signatures in. So I knew I was forgetting something. Okay. So then I'm gonna go through the corresponding hole, come out the back, and this is where I use the pliers, pull it through. Sometimes, you know, the eye of the needle is sometimes kind of thick, and just saves your fingers if you just use a pair of pliers. And then I'm going to go back in through the top hole in that same row, and then into the signature. And this is what I was talking about with using a rounded needle. It's just easier to get that needle through through those holes rather than a sharp needle. Anyway, and then pull through with the pliers. And I'm not cinching everything up real tight right now. I'm actually keeping it pretty loose because I want to be able to see what's going on in here. Okay, so just holding everything in place with my hand, with my fingers. Then I'm gonna kind of realign this hole using the awl, because when you punch the hole originally, you punched it from the other side, so you've got your, I don't know, like chaff or whatever you want to call it, like kind of sticking in this way, and that makes it a little bit more difficult to get your needle to go straight through. So I sort of realign the hole using the awl and push the paper going that way. Does that make sense? So it just makes it easier to get your needle in. And then make sure you're going into the correct hole. That's the easiest mistake to make, is to accidentally bind into the wrong hole. That was easy to pull through. Okay, and again, I'm not cinching this up real tight. Okay, so I went into the bottom hole then on the inside. Now I'm going to go back through the center, and I'm going to try to stay on the right hand side of the string when I go through that hole, so that I don't split it. You want to try not to split that string, and that is another reason why it's nice to use a rounded needle. A sharp needle, you're much more likely to split the string. Okay, so I'm holding this with, see how I'm holding this with my hand, with my fingers? I've got 2 fingers on the inside, a couple on the outside, and just going to guide that through. I'm going to try to have my needle come out on the opposite side. So see how this string comes through? Well, it's hard to, I'll show you just a second. Okay, so basically you want one string to come out on that side of the center string, and then the other side, the other end, to be on the opposite side, because you're going to tie it, when you tie your knot, you're going to tie it around that vertical string. Okay, and that locks it in place. So now we can start to kind of cinch things up. So if you pull the top here, it's going to pull this string shorter. And then if I pull this, it's going to pull that center one tight. Okay, just so I know how much string I'm using up. Now you want to make sure that you don't have a big loop on the outside. I've done that before too, where I thought I had everything, you know, tightly bound and everything, and then I had a big loop on the back. So and you have to kind of do it all over again. Anyway, so you want to just kind of give both of these a little tug. You just want to pull them both kind of up like that. You don't need to do it really tight. I mean, you don't have to really yank on it. Otherwise, you can damage these holes that you've punched in the cover, okay? So then you're just going to tie a knot around that cord, or around that vertical string. So this is why I think it's easier to do a 3-hole, because you're tying the wax cord around that vertical string, and it just holds, like you don't have to make sure that you're maintaining the tautness of the string when you're just doing 2 holes. Like, I don't know why, I'm not sure how to explain it, but it's easier to keep the string tight when you're doing the 3-hole. I don't know how to explain it, but you'll know what I mean if you've done this before, or when you start doing it, or you've done 2 holes and, you know, anyway. So again, punch my top and my bottom. Oh, the awl fell out. That's okay. In through the center. Through the center. Leave about that much string. Through the top. Through the top. Hold everything together. Line up my holes. From the bottom, back through the center to the right of the string. I've got some give here so I can see what's going on. I'm trying to make sure my needle comes out on the opposite side of this one. If it's too hard to pull, I grab my pliers. If not, then it's good to go. Okay. So when you're tying the signature, this is what I mean when I say that the waxed thread makes it easier to tie. It just, because you can tie that first hitch, and it stays, like it holds in place. And with the wax, with just like regular cotton, it wouldn't stay like that. It would just come untied. And also with the 2-hole stitch, you know, if we were doing 2-hole stitch, I'd have to hold my finger there and then, you know, work on tying the rest of the knot. But with the 3-hole, since you're using waxed string, and you're also just tying a knot around that vertical string, it's just easier to tie the knot. It just makes it easier. Anyway, and then just kind of give that a little bit of a fold down and continue on. So see, I've got just about enough left for my 3rd signature. If it's in question, you kind of want to line it up on here and make sure you've got at least twice the height of the book as far as how much string you have left. Anyway, so that's basically, you know, how I do a 3-hole pamphlet stitch. And I just like the way it looks on the spine. And it's really sturdy. Like, it's a really sturdy stitch. I very rarely do 5-hole. I used to do it a lot, but anymore it's about function for me. And so 3 holes tends to be about where I max out. If I was doing something a lot taller, like a much larger, like glue book or something, where I knew that they were going to get a lot of abuse, I might do 5-hole. I did some big glue books earlier in the year. Actually, it was last year, but they were like the Reader's Digest, like I don't remember what they were, like handyman books or something. And after I bound them, I thought I should have done 5-hole pamphlet stitch on those. So I'm a little nervous about how those hold up. So, but I hope they're okay. So if you have one of those, be careful with it. Anyway, so I'll be back. Hopefully, I think I should be able to get the rest of these finished in the next couple days. And I've got a couple other things that I'm going to do to them, but these are going to be kind of simple, just basic, like writing journals. And then I've got another set of them that are more like glue books. So anyway, so keep an eye out for those. I might do another video later on today, doing just some simple charms. So I don't know. I might not. Depends on how much energy I have. Anyway, okay, that's it. 30 minutes, 3-hole pamphlet stitch. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, or you can always send me an email. I'm not opposed to that. Okay. Love you guys. All right. Bye for now.